Okay, we're continuing on with 4.5 debt management. This is example B, part 2 of the video today. So this is the same scenario. Sonia decides to stop making any charges on her credit card and continue to make the minimum payment each month for the remainder of the year. To the nearest percent, what percent of her payments went towards paying off the balance of the card? For time purposes, I've gone ahead and completed this chart. So we're using the same finance charge. It's 0.0125, and the same payment was the minimum payment at the rate of 1.5%, which is a decimal of 0.015. So I've gone through and done all this work, so please copy this down. What's important to note here is she starts out with this previous balance of $2,554.39, and this was carried over from Part A. Okay, so that's what we ended with in June. And then at the end, her balance is $2,513.65. So the difference in these two problems, example A and B, is her balance starts to decrease somewhat. Okay, it's very small though. Okay, so let's figure out what that difference is. So when it says to the nearest percent, what percent of her payments went towards paying off the balance of the card? We've got to start with the previous and the final. Okay, so let's see how much she paid off. She only paid in 6 months $40.74 went towards the balance of paying this credit card off. And she made these total payments. Okay, so we're adding up our payment column here. And she made $231 worth of payments. So to find the percent of payments that went toward the balance, we're taking the amount that was paid off, $40.74, and we're dividing it by how much she actually paid. That gives us a decimal, but we're going to change that to the nearest whole percent. So only 18% of this amount that she paid went towards paying off the balance. Here's the trouble with only paying the minimum amount. It takes a very long time to get out of this debt, okay? If people continue to only pay the minimum, it will take a very long time. And that's what this chart explains down here. It says, even without making new purchases, paying only the minimum balance on a credit card will extend the payments on a credit card for a long time. The table below shows how long it will take to pay off a balance if a minimum payment of 1.5% is made on a credit card with an APR of 15%. That's what we used in our scenario. So look at this. This is very scary. $500 balance. It would take 6 years to pay that off. And this is the interest, and this is how much you're going to end up paying. That's crazy. Okay, look at this $8,000 credit card debt. It would take somebody 94 years. Okay, most people don't live to 94 years. All right, so this is how people get into bad situations financially by using credit cards. If they continue to only pay the minimum amount, it's not going to help them. Okay. So I caution you kids against credit cards in the first place. Another important thing to know is your debt to income ratio. So let's define that. It's a ratio, which is a comparison of two values. Usually we see it expressed as a percent that indicates the percent of your income that is spent on living expenses or debt. I'm just going to say and or debt here. Okay? It's just a ratio that shows what you owe in payments every month to what you're bringing in. So it's debt payments, this is how we calculate it, divided by your income. And that gives us a decimal, which we would change to a percent. Okay, so the following guidelines here that are listed below are what the financial industry uses to classify a person's debt load, okay? So when you apply for any kind of loan, whether it be a car loan, a mortgage to buy a home, they use this debt income ratio to find out if you can get a good rate or a not so good rate. All right, so here's what they consider healthy, 36% or less. 37 to 42%, you should begin to try to reduce some debt. 43 to 49, you're starting to get into some financial difficulties. And if you're over 50% or more, you're in a dangerous financial position. A lot of people really are sitting in this 50% area. They live month to month. They're just barely getting by paying their bills. Okay, let's look at example C. Hollister earns $3,000 each month. He pays $500 per month for housing and has $50 per month in other debt payments. What is his debt to income ratio? Evaluate his financial health. Okay, so we're going to add up. Let's write out our formula. Debt payments over income. And let's sub in. Well, what is he paying per month? $500 plus $50. And then it says his income is $3,000. So we get 550 divided by 3,000. And that gives us 18% once I change that decimal to a percent. We're rounding to the nearest whole number here, okay? Round that decimal to the nearest whole number. And remember, once you get that decimal, you can multiply by 100 to get your percent. Okay, let's look at example D. Lorna earns $2,050 each month. She pays $800 per month for housing and has $250 per month in other debt payments. What is her debt to income ratio? Evaluate her financial health. Well, we're going to do the same thing. Debt payments over income. So, 800 for housing, 250 for other things, and her income is 2,050. So we get 1050 over 2050. And when I do that, I get a decimal, I multiply it by 100, and I round to the nearest whole number, and it's 51%. So she's in a dangerous financial position. And I should have written up above here that this one was healthy. Healthy debt load. Okay. All right, let's look at the last section here. Last couple pages of notes. We have credit score. A credit score is a number that financial institutions use to rate a customer's, financial health. In addition to your debt and to income, these credit scores can be used to evaluate your financial health. The higher your credit score, the more likely you are to qualify for a credit card or a loan and receive the lowest interest rate, okay? So if your debt to income credit score is a high number, like in the 800s, 900s, which is really very hard to get into the 900s, but if you have a very high number, you can get a better rate on loans, okay? here's some really important information that everybody should know about. When it comes to managing and reducing your debt, you should always try to use cash, not credit cards when possible. You can transfer high interest credit card balances to lower interest accounts. Pay more than the minimum. This is key. If you continue to pay the minimum, you will never get out of debt. So you have to make more than the minimum payment on your credit cards. Pay off credit cards with the highest interest rates first. Consider debt management counseling. Consider a consolidation loan. Okay, and that's what we're going to talk about here. But let's go back to managing and reducing debt. And this is so important. Credit card companies, they will take advantage of people. Okay, they want you to be in debt because they're getting finance charges on your debt every month. That's how credit card companies make money. Okay, so just try not to use credit cards when you absolutely have to, as sometimes you might get into the situation where you need to. Just try to pay that off every month to avoid finance charges. That's the best advice I can give you as your teacher. Okay, consolidation loans. It's money borrowed to pay off all debt in one payment instead of having multiple creditors. So instead of paying several creditors, you will make one payment to one place. Okay, so it's taking all of your debt, putting it in one loan, and paying one payment instead of a bunch of little ones. Here's some information about factors that influence your credit score. Okay, the length of your credit history, new credit, types of credit, amounts you owe, and your payment history. If you never miss a payment, your credit score will be pretty good. Okay, if you pay your debt on time, you owe small amounts to creditors, type of credit used, like if you have car loans, a mortgage payment, those things. All right, all this is key in factoring in that credit score. All right, so what you should do now is try the textbook practice problems and use the video that I post to check your work on those. You can work on that today or tomorrow. It does not matter. All right, have a good day.